I'm here today to talk to you guys about one of my favorite topics, Facebook and Instagram ads. A hot topic right now, and there's a lot you can do with both of these channels. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can really revolutionize your strategy on both of these platforms. So before I dive into it, let me just introduce myself really quickly. My name's Laura Hobson. I work for a company called Curelate. We're a marketing technology company. And just a little bit about my background. I'm a digital media specialist at Curelate, and what that means is I just focus on all of our digital ad solutions at Curelate. I started my career on the digital ad agency side of things, working with clients like Nike to develop digital ad strategy. From there, transitioned to the client side of the fence, so was at Microsoft for a number of years, followed by Zillow. And at both of those places, really responsible for developing digital ad strategy and kind of staying on top of the latest trends. As you guys know, Facebook and Instagram advertising really changes almost by the day, so staying on top of a lot of that. So with that, today, like I mentioned, I focus on our ad solutions at Curelate. It's where I get to work with all of these brands and really helping them drive consumer awareness and engagement for their brands. So you guys are probably wondering, that's fantastic, but what in the world is Curelate? So let me just give you a little bit of background on that before I hop into things, just to kind of set context. Curelate is a marketing technology company. We're actually a startup that's based out of Philadelphia. I'm in our Seattle office, so enjoying the sun while I'm here in Vegas while I can. We also have an office in New York City. And so Curelate, essentially what we do is we take all of the visual content that surrounds a brand and we make that visual content smarter. And so what I mean when I say making visual content smarter, you're essentially making imagery aware of the products and services within that image. And so why that's important in the context of the space of digital ads is really it enables you to make your images more actionable and more discoverable. And as we all know, more actionable and more discoverable images can make your advertising more effective. So with that, let's talk digital ads. Just a couple quick stats to kind of level set where both of these platforms are at, specifically talking about Instagram and Facebook. The value of both of these channels is really indisputable. If you look at just the monthly unique users alone on a platform like Instagram, right now it's around 500 million and growing by the day, monthly unique users. On the flip side of that, Facebook, 1.5 billion. So huge amount of eyeballs, and a lot of brands are investing in these channels, but very few are doing it very effectively. And there's a lot of tips and tricks I'm going to talk about in order to use both of these channels to really drive return on ad spend. So just a quick agenda of what I'm going to talk about today. I'll start off by talking about the state of feed-based advertising. And I'll explain what I mean by that and kind of how the feed-based advertising landscape has really changed over the last couple of years. Then I'll get into an innovative approach. So ways that you can use feed-based advertising to your advantage and capitalize on some of these trends. Next, I'll talk about advancing your targeting. So a lot of brands are still kind of getting their feet wet with channels like Instagram. It's only been about a year since you could put paid placements on that platform. So talking about how you can really innovate on your approach there. And then I'll wrap it up, give you guys some nice tangible best practices that you can take home with you after Vegas. So with that, let's get into the state of feed-based advertising. So the world of retargeting ads in general has changed quite a bit, and it's really been revolutionized by feed-based advertising. And so what do I mean by that? Feed-based ads are powered by your product feed. So let's say you're a retailer, you have a standard product feed that you use, dynamically updates when products are sold. So it's essentially a unit that could be either a Facebook dynamic ad, an Instagram dynamic ad. You can also think about Google Shopping ads. All of these types of feed-based ad units are reliant on a product feed in order to operate. So there's a lot of different, benefits of using feed-based ads, and one of them is you do not have to go out there and create unique creative for every single product you're selling. If you think about it, you take the template for whatever feed-based ad unit you're going to use. Let's say it's a Facebook dynamic ad. There's a set template, there's set specs. You make sure you have your brand voice, the look and feel, and then you plug in your product feed. So you don't have to go out and create an individual ad for every single product you're selling. And so these types of ads are incredibly impactful, especially when used as retargeting ads. So just a couple more stats about social ads in general, and since I'm kind of honing in on two specific platforms here, Facebook and Instagram, they're really making huge waves in the social ad space. Facebook last year captured nearly 65% of social network ad revenues just last year. So it's growing. And while Instagram doesn't yet carry as much weight, the channel is growing rapidly. So looking at an eMarketer forecast recently, 10% of Facebook's global mobile ad revenue was accounted for by Instagram, and that's projected to increase going into 2017. So I've mentioned dynamic ads several times, and I'm sure you guys are all really aware of what these types of ads are, but just as a quick refresher, and even if you're not familiar with what they are, you've probably been retargeted with them in your own Facebook newsfeed, maybe even today, or on Instagram. So they were formerly known as DPAs, or dynamic product ads. They're now just referred to as dynamic ads on Instagram or Facebook. And essentially what they do is they allow brands to promote products based on specific user behavior on their sites. So again, this offers a lot of benefits. I mentioned you don't have to create a unique piece of creative for every single product you're selling. You're also able to target consumers that have gone all the way to abandoning the cart on your site and then retargeting them on Facebook. So if you think about it, you've got a consumer on your site shopping for, let's say, a red shirt. They view your product detail page. That triggers one thing on the Facebook pixel. So you have that user behavior. They go all the way to adding that to cart. It's another trigger. And let's say they abandon cart, completely leave the site, and don't have any plans really on coming back. Later, they're going to their Facebook newsfeed, they're scrolling through that feed, and all of a sudden there's that red shirt. And you guys have probably seen these, and you probably have all been retargeted by them. And what's really interesting about these types of ads is, at first they can be a little creepy, because it's like, well, how did they know? But the funny thing is they are incredibly effective when you look at return on ad spend numbers. So that's sort of the baseline. You're using your product feed, you're using the standard stock photography that you have in your feed, and you're using them in dynamic ads as a baseline. And so what I'm going to talk about is how you can take that to the next level, how you can take a concept that already is proven to perform and take that kind of up a notch. So the main issue that we've seen in working with a lot of major retail brands that we work with at Curelate is a lot of brands aren't doing very well with this type of advertising. And here's the issue. They're still relying on stock photography that exists in their product feed. So if you think about it, stock images in your feed, they definitely serve a purpose. They provide logical information on what the product is that you're selling, but they're not very exciting. And if you think about the kind of content that pervades a Facebook newsfeed, you've got engagement announcements, cute puppy photos, political debates. A stock photo from a brand is not going to do a lot to cut through the noise. So if you think about how you can take that product feed and augment it so that you're using imagery that's actually compelling. One of the reasons I love working with our clients is they're willing to kind of do some innovative things. And so what I'm going to show you is how you can take this feed-based advertising space and go beyond stock photos. So let me give you a couple real-life examples of what I mean by going beyond stock photography. So here's an example of a Facebook dynamic ad. This is what they look like in your newsfeed. QVC is one of our clients. As you can see in this example, images dominate the experience. Images are the main factor, the main thing that's calling you to action within the ad unit. And what is going to drive a consumer to click on the product on the left versus the product on the right is the image. So instead of relying on stock photography for these type of dynamic ads, QVC worked with us to take all of their lifestyle imagery they already had. So they didn't have to go out and do, a costly photo shoot or work with an expensive creative agency to produce additional imagery. They already had a lot of these assets. And honestly, they had a lot of these assets because they were already putting the work into it for their Instagram page. So what we did is we took all of these images and created a custom product feed for them. And what they were able to do is feed that into their dynamic ads. And what they saw was an increase of click-through rate of 63%. It was ridiculous. And also looking at return on ad spend, they saw a lift in return on ad spend of 31%. Another pretty cool example is of just sort of going beyond stock photography in the dynamic ad space is a work we did with a major fashion retailer. And it's really, by this point, it had become kind of no big surprise that consumers are going to be more attracted to, compelling lifestyle imagery versus just a product photographed on a stale white background. But what we did is a very similar thing. We took existing lifestyle imagery that the brand had already put together for their Instagram page. So it's a lot of really inspirational and very aesthetically pleasing type of images, and created a custom product feed for them so that they could really harness the power of these dynamic ads. And what's really interesting, especially in this example, is like I said, from the baseline, these types of ads work really well. From the get-go, they saw a 50x return on ad spend. So meaning, for every dollar they spent, they got $50 back on these ads. And when they swapped in the more compelling imagery, they saw a 98x return on ad spend. So some pretty awesome results that we were pretty excited about. With that, I know that, as any good marketer knows, retargeting is not going to get you all the way. You can do a lot with retargeting. It can be a very large portion of your marketing mix. I think retargeting is incredibly impactful. You're targeting people that have taken a very specific action on your site. You already know who they are. But the other side of that is prospecting, of course. So attracting new consumers to your brand and getting new consumers into your funnel. You need to, of course, dedicate a portion of your media dollars towards prospecting ads, but in the context of Facebook and Instagram ads, they can get really, really complicated really quickly. The benefit is that, of course, Instagram benefits from all of the advanced Facebook targeting that's out there. And you can kind of harness the power of that. But what I'm going to talk about today is kind of an innovative approach to targeting on a platform like Instagram. What's interesting is I was actually just reading a study that Nielsen did on Instagram sponsored posts, so Instagram ads, and then they actually found that Instagram ads showed a 2.x times higher than any other form of digital advertising right now. So a huge amount of opportunity on a platform like Instagram if you can do it correctly. The downside of that is it's very tricky to do. A lot of people are still honestly getting used to the fact that there's ads in their Instagram feed. So it's a very delicate thing. You don't want to alienate any of your consumers by pumping in an ad that the creative isn't on point, the targeting isn't on point. It has to be done very precisely. So with that, when you're kind of thinking about a prospecting campaign, there are a lot of different factors to consider. First off, what is your message? What are you really trying to communicate to your consumers, and what do you want them to do? And of course, there's always that eternal question of what in the world is the ad even going to look like? In my mind, advertising is really all about that visual engagement with your consumer. And the right image, if it's done right, can be very, very persuasive. So it really starts with the visuals. The visuals really determine how a consumer thinks and feels about your brand. And honestly, let's all just be honest, there's there's a fair amount of guesswork that goes into it. I know that I've definitely been there in my past life. There's a fair amount of guesswork involved in choosing those images that are really going to drive results. And more often than not, you can end up in costly test and learn cycles, or a lot of iterations, or stuck in bureaucracy internally of what is that ad actually going to look like. You can end up in a meeting arguing about what color of blue is the correct color to use, not that I'm speaking from experience. But there's a lot of tools out there that can really take a lot of the guesswork out of the equation. There's a lot of tools that you can use to put data behind decisions to come with a more informed opinion. So just an example of that is at Curelate, what we do is we take a look at image performance on a brand's like-to-buy experience, and we use that as a baseline. So really quickly, you might be thinking that's fantastic, but what is like-to-buy? Like-to-buy, you've probably seen this on the Instagram profile of one of your favorite brands. Here's just a quick example of like-to-buy in action for Forever 21. If you take a look there's a clickable link in the brand's profile that will take you to their like-to-buy experience. So the user's on an Instagram profile, there's one clickable link in that profile, it takes you to like-to-buy. And that whole experience is powered by Curelate, and what it does is it features all of the content from Forever 21 or from any retail brand, and it makes their Instagram profile shoppable. So any kind of content that you see that a brand is like, man, those shoes look amazing, or what shirt is that model wearing? It takes that sort of frustration when you're kind of going through your Instagram feed and you want to know more product information, it bridges that gap. So you can go to a like-to-buy page and it'll take you directly into an e-commerce experience where you can buy the images you're seeing on Instagram. So why I'm telling you this story is that essentially what we do, and when I mentioned kind of taking the guesswork out of deciding what types of images would work well in a paid placement, especially in a platform like Instagram, is taking a look at intelligence around what types of images are performing in this like-to-buy experience. And so let me take you through a couple examples I'll take you through how that worked really well here in a moment. But I want to talk really quickly because I promised to talk about kind of an innovative approach to targeting on Instagram. So in my mind, when you're going into a prospecting campaign on Instagram, you're thinking about two sort of separate buckets. What is that image going to look like? And then how am I going to target consumers on the platform? So after you've sort of decided what kind of image to look at, targeting your ad is the next thing. So what I want to talk about is sort of a fundamentally different approach to targeting. What you can do is essentially start by taking a look at people that are engaging with your brand on your brand's existing touch points. So things that already exist. So think about your site, your blog, or you could think about the like-to-buy experience that I was just explaining. So your brand's existing touch points and looking at the consumers that are already visiting those touch points. What you can do from there is create a custom audience within Facebook. Like I mentioned before, Instagram utilizes Facebook targeting in order to do the targeting on Instagram. So you would create a custom audience, and you would use that to seed what's called a lookalike audience. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware of how this works. But essentially, what we do at Curelate is we take a look at a brand's existing touch point, like the like-to-buy experience. We see the types of consumers that are visiting a touch point like that, create a lookalike audience. And so what that lookalike audience is going to include are people that they share very similar traits to folks that are in this custom audience bucket, but it enables you to go after a much broader set of people. And why the like-to-buy experience is interesting to us is because those types of consumers, or the people that fall into that bucket, have shown two things. They've shown an intent to engage with the brand. They've gone just sort of one step further to engage with the brand, but they're also very savvy Instagram users. And that's important, especially when targeting on a platform like Instagram. A lot of brands right now are taking a look at their Facebook fans and retargeting them on Instagram. And while that could be a really great place to start, it's probably not the most effective way to target on the platform, because if you think about your Facebook fans and your Instagram fans, that could be two very different types of people. So another thing I just wanted to mention too is that with this approach, and especially with retargeting or creating that lookalike audience based on liked by visitors, you're really targeting based on image affinity instead of brand affinity, which is definitely a more traditional approach. So I know that finding the right people at the right time is a challenge that all of us as marketers face. But this sort of example of advanced targeting, of using lookalike targeting in order to find people on Instagram, is a great way that you can find users that are more likely to engage with the brand by looking at actions that they've already taken across your brand's various touch points. So let me give you a couple examples where this actually worked pretty well. We worked with Paige Denim recently to launch an Instagram campaign, and what Paige was able to do is they started by utilizing their like to buy reporting, and that gave them a lot of image intelligence on what types of images were performing really well on their Instagram feed before they spent any money on media. So you can glean a lot of insights. You can actually use the same top performing image, if that makes sense for the brand. But you can see, let's say, for example, is a lay down shot like you see here performing better? Is a product on a model performing better? Is a product on a certain influencer performing better? There are a lot of different image insights that you can gain from this in order to inform your decision before you spend any money. And so what this did is it really reduced the need for costly test and learn cycles with Paige Denim. And then they were able to take that, they coupled it with the like to buy lookalike audience that I was just talking about, and their results were amazing. What they actually saw, there's a couple results on this slide, but the one that I find the most interesting is their relevance score. So as you guys know, on Facebook and Instagram, your relevance score is incredibly important. It's between 1 and 10, 10 being the best, and it can really impact how much you end up paying for your ad. So they're rewarding you based on relevance. So the smarter your targeting is, the smarter your image is, the higher your relevance score is going to be. And with this, they saw their relevance score jump by 40%. So capitalizing on these sort of the combination of image intelligence and advanced targeting, relevance score goes up. Another great example of this is we worked with a major global retailer for the holiday season. And as you guys know, the holiday season is a very, very competitive time for advertising. And what they did here is they utilized this lookalike audience technique that I was talking about. And they saw not only a decrease in their cost per click, but also in their cost per impression. If you take a look at, their decrease in cost per impression in the US, for example, was 34%. So a great way to not only increase your relevance score, but also become much more efficient with what you're spending. And the last example that I have here is from a unique lifestyle and fashion brand that was brand new to the concept of Instagram ads. And this is not unique. A lot of brands are still getting their feet wet on this platform. And so what we did is we worked with them closely to identify opportunities to improve their ad performance by looking at images that had performed well on their Instagram profile in general. So taking a look at images that performed well from organic posts and using that as insight into what types of images would perform well in a paid placement. And so they were actually able to reduce their cost per click by almost $2. So when you're looking at cost per click, a reduction by $2 is pretty unheard of. So some pretty exciting results here. They also saw a pretty big increase in their relevancy score. So just to wrap things up, I want to offer you guys 3 best practices to take home with you after your time here in sunny Las Vegas. The first one being spruce up your product feed. So this one's probably pretty obvious after everything that I was just talking about with dynamic advertising and what you can really do with feed-based advertising. So feed-based advertising is growing, incredibly impactful solution. And what you can do is you can spruce up your product feed by using, at Curelate we call them lifestyle images. Images that show people enjoying your products or services in real life scenarios. So thinking outside of just the stock photography, making sure these images are not only compelling, but they're also inspirational. And you can do this by, like I said, collecting images that already exist. They're already at your fingertips. And a pretty big hint here is just actually using images from your Instagram feed. So if you have community managers that are already spending and dedicating a lot of time and effort to creating these types of images, putting those into your product feed and utilizing them in feed-based ads. So I can't believe I'm going to say this one. You guys have probably heard this 1,000 times, and I know I've heard it a million times. But I think it's really important, again, in the context of Facebook and Instagram ads, is thinking about mobile. As you guys know, Instagram's a mobile-first platform. Facebook has some 38% of Facebook's monthly users are mobile only. So if you're not thinking about mobile, you're probably missing a good chunk of what your money could be doing for you on these platforms. And so when I say think mobile when it comes to these, I basically mean if you're going to spend money on an ad on Facebook or Instagram and you don't have a mobile optimized site, you're wasting your money. So making sure that your site is mobilized or optimized for mobile, because nothing is going to drive a mobile user away like landing on a page that's not optimized for their device. And then the last one is creating stronger targeted audiences. So like I mentioned, a lot of brands rely on Facebook fans to create targeted audiences on Instagram. And while that's a really good place to start, someone that has shown interest in a brand on Facebook hasn't necessarily shown an interest on Instagram and hasn't necessarily shown an intent to purchase either. So by taking a look at engagement signals across a brand's existing touch points, you can create stronger targeted audiences on Instagram. Blog visitors, like I mentioned, site visitors, like to buy visitors, all of these are great places to look and things that already exist. So by creating a target audience on Instagram that looks like your blog visitors or looks like your site visitors, is just one way that you can apply data that you already have to better target new consumers. So let me just quickly recap. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and a free lunch. So, and also know that I'm going to be here at the remainder of the conference, so feel free to grab me afterwards. More than happy to answer any of your questions. And I also have some contact info on the next slide as well. But just to recap everything we went through, we talked about feed-based advertising and where that's headed. We talked about kind of an innovative approach to feed-based advertising, some ways you can advance your targeting on a platform like Instagram. And then lastly, hopefully gave you some good best practices that you can take home with you. So with that, thank you.